Welcome back to Matchnik Garage. We're back on Project McMurray, our 67 Chevy C10, and today we're working on a rear axle. Going to be putting in this Spartan Locker. My spider gears are a bit wore out from the previous owner's one-wheel burnouts repeatedly. So we're going to go with that, also known as lunchbox, whatever you want to call it. And while we're at it, I've got new brake shoes, hardware, wheel cylinders, all of the things that you need after a vehicle sits for 30 years. So let's get right into it. All right, I already went ahead and pulled off the cover, and you can see we've got an open carrier, spider gears, all the magic. But there is an excessive amount of play in there. Spider gears, they're loose on the shaft, they're loose. I'm sure the splines on the axle shafts themselves are partly wore out too, but there's so much slop in here, and it's all in the spiders. The pinion bearings are fine, the carrier bearings are fine, all of that. So figured the easiest way to do this is to throw two rocks at one bird and just rip the spider gaiters out, put in a Spartan Locker. That gives us new parts and two-wheel burnouts. So let's spin this up and start ripping these old gears out of here. Now, I've never used one of these lockers before. I mean, I've seen them around for years, but I figure this was the most cost-effective way to, get two wheels, and there's some heavy grooves on there, or the one-wheel burnouts, that's what I'm saying. So we've got a new center pin with our kit. Now, just push our axles in, pull out our C-clips, and we can slide them right out. Now, you probably won't be able to see it, but I could see through this hole right here. Those splines are worn out. They're not worn out, but they're heavily worn. So we'll put, new parts on bad parts and, hope for the best. Another C-clip out. Pull that out. And then we should be able to spin these gears right out. Got our thrush washer on there, which we won't be using. Yeah, a lot of smoky one tire on there. Now I got it all jammed up. What have I done? Just come on this side. Pull the side gears out. Yeah, heavy grooves on that surface. I mean, it was well lubricated, so, if you were going to try and destroy it, at least make it last a little longer. There's a lot of wear lines on these teeth. Even on this side, there's heavy wear. So, that's all there is to that. Let's go out and get our Spartan Locker set up, ready to slide in here. All right, so we've got all our pieces here. Got our side gears. These are the center gears. They lock together, you know. But now the key to this kit, or this locker kit, is it's supposed to unlock and kind of ratchet around a corner so you don't get that wheel hop or whatever you want to call it. The trickiest part is one, you get all these little pieces to get in there, which we'll get there in a minute. But then, once this is all in there, you've got to slide your C-clips into the axle shaft. We'll see how it goes. I've got a feeling we're going to be fighting with that for a second. So let's get all these pieces in. Give you a new center pin locking screw. And then you've got these 4 little dowel pins. Each one of them gets a spring. And then you take your center halves and you've got these bores that the pins go in. So I'll drop them in there. And then the nice thing is you don't have to fight with all these individual pieces. You push it in, shove this little, well, easier said than done. There's a little schmutz in the hole. Well, so that right there, we want to make sure we test all these holes. That's a nice little chunk of metal from the machining. We'll make sure we get, you know, so maybe it's a good idea to test all those holes before you start slapping it all together. Make sure it's all clean. But you push that in, shove this little dowel in there, and that'll hold that in during assembly. So we do 4 of these, 2 on each center half. Let's test out these holes so we don't get any issues. All right, so now we've got all 4 of those dowel pins. Now these center pieces, you got to have these inside grooves facing out towards the teeth. Because what that does is that goes through the center part and then rides right on the center there of the outside gear. So just got to make sure we have all that oriented in the right direction. But that's pretty much about it, you know, as far as setting it up before we just go slap it in there. So what I'm going to do, and what I've seen, is I need to find a small magnet so that when we've got these in there, we can put a magnet on the end and just slide that right in onto the axle shaft. So let me find that, and then we'll get under there and get this in. All right, so now they're down here. Got all our pieces here laid out. So let's go ahead and start with the side gears. And I'll start with this side here. You know, there's still plenty of gear lube in here that I don't feel like I need to lube everything up. But if this was dry and a new build, I would put some gear lube in there and make sure everything slides freely. Go a little bit of an angle. Push this side. So now I'm going to hold that and just get the axle shaft started in there. And that feels pretty good on the shaft. So it gives me hope that the splines on the axle shaft aren't too wore out. So I'm going to do the same on the other side, just get the shaft started. got to take our 2 half sections and get these in here without knocking these pins loose. I mean, they're in there pretty solid, so we should be all right. Just kind of feed it in there. Hold it in place, and then we got to slide the axle shaft in even further. Yeah, so when we get this in there, the C-clip will actually sit in that little cup, just like that. So we got the groove here, so we got to kind of keep that in mind when we're lining this stuff up. Get this one in here. Yeah, it's a tight squeeze. I wonder if I need to do this one first. So it's just kind of going to be a trial and error kind of deal. Push that shaft out a little bit again. So flip this one. We'll let that just sit there. Now, this one. Shaft is sticking in there a little too far. All right, there we go. Now it just slips right in. Okay, so now I'm going to push my right axles in all the way. Just going to try and get things kind of lined up here. I mean, it's going to take some finagling. All right, so now I need to push the left shaft in. Okay. So now we want to rotate this down. Almost pulled the pin out. Yeah, this is just puts one gear in, roll the one down. Okay. So now we've got this little space here that this needs to fit into. So you got to pull the axle shaft out just so you can see your C-clip groove on the end of the shaft right in there. And then make sure your deals are clean. Try to get that in there. So it appears I've got that one. Just gonna shine a light in there and verify it's in there. So the issue I'm having now is that center cup has got to be pushed out. And hold that C-clip centered on the end of the shaft. So I'm just rolling the shaft, holding a little bit of pressure out on it. There we go. So that way I can get the C-clip to the top, so that it drops down like this, and then you know it's centered, and you can push that center cup outward to surround the C-clip. So now, yeah, we've got a solid lock on that one. So now let's roll this over. Making sure our one C-clip is good. And we'll get the groove for this other side. Line it up. So, roll over here, pull the shaft out a little bit. Need a little more space there. So we'll get those dowel pins to line up in the center sections there. Okay. Got to wedge that center cup over a little bit. It's not all the way in just yet. I think I've got to move the axle shaft in or out a little bit. Okay, now I feel like I've got the C-clip on. Spider webs everywhere. Okay. So now it's in there. Now I've got to get everything lined up so I can get that center pin in there. Now, I think what we're going to do is we're going to chance it. The instructions say once you've got the C-clip in, you can pull these pins. And that'll hold some outward pressure on those center pieces, which I can see in there, they've both walked in. Okay. So now we'll get, okay, so now we've got a line on both sides. And they are in fact locked together. So now we've got to get our C-clips in those cups. So that we can get our cross pin in there. Okay, we're getting closer. Okay, so I've got that one. And it appears the other one is out too. So, see if I can get you in here to get a look on it. So we've got the two halves and they're out as far as they can go. And we'll just verify. Our center pin, cross pin, whatever, fits between them. We'll line up our cross pin hole. Now I don't have this hold down screw in the middle there. I just wanted to get it the closest. So we'll put the hole for the center pin on the other side. And now, making sure it doesn't fall out, rotate it around. Our pin in there. And because I'm curious, we'll just give it an extra look. So that's pretty neat. I think we've got it all lined up. There's a little bit of play in there. But now this gap and those dowels with the springs on them keep it so that when it wants to unlock around a corner, they just come together, one side or the other, and the teeth disengage. So supposedly, you might hear a little bit of clunk. The people I've heard say it's really not that bad. And the cost of this versus ripping this whole thing out and putting a different carrier in there, I'll take the little bit of clunk. So go ahead and put this in a little bit. This is the new lock bolt from the kit, so it's got some thread locker on it already. I'm just going to take a hammer and put it between the wheel studs. See if I can't get that to hold this while I give it a torque. Oh, it's like I need an extra hand. Click. I don't know about you guys, but I heard the torque wrench, so now I've got these 4 pins. I'm going to hold on to these in case I've ever got to take this apart again to do the axle seals or an axle bearing on the outsides of the tubes. Then I can hold on to these and put this all back together a lot easier. I'm sure if you had some solid 12 gauge wire or 14 gauge wire or something, it would work just fine. But these aren't going to take up much room in my toolbox, and I'll probably forget they're there when I got to do it anyway. So other than that, that's pretty good. It's still a little play in there, but I can live with that. You know, compared to this old cross pin that is just heavily worn on there, both ends. Like I can catch my fingernail on those grooves a lot. So let's move on. I'll get that cleaned up and buttoned up later. Get the cover glued on. But let's move on to some brakes. All right. Yeah, as you can see, these brake shoes are, you know, they're thin for one, but they also don't, they're not much there anymore. So we got our axles locked in the center there, just to double check because I'm paranoid. But let's go ahead and start pulling some of these pieces off. Now, a lot of people are intimidated by drum brakes. You know, just put it back the way you found it, and it really shouldn't be too bad. One thing you've got to take note of, and it's hard to tell in a circumstance like this where you're missing most of the lining on the shoe, but if we line them up there, you know, one set of lining is bigger than the other. Now I looked at the other side. The shoe with the bigger lining on it, in this circumstance, goes on the back. So we just gotta make note of that. So I don't really use any special tools for drum brakes. You know, pliers, give it a twist. Then another thing to keep track of is in our kit for these hold down springs, comes with 2 different lengths. Now for me it's easy to tell. We've got some extra self-adjust hardware over here and none over here. So the shorter one will go with the hardware, the longer one will go with no hardware. And that'll be easy to tell for that. So I just throw everything in the in the drum in case I need any of it. Or it comes flying at me. Got the, I call them nails because they look like nails, but pull them out. They're actually not in bad shape. A lot of times in stuff of this vintage, they're about rotted off or completely missing. Try to get that adjuster out of there. Oh, we got a spring holding it together. Now, some of these parts we may need. So let's figure out what we've got. Appears to be that spring. This one appears to be that spring. And this one appears to be that spring. So I didn't get the adjusters, so hopefully I can get those cleaned up, but we've got to hold on to this spring that is above the adjuster. So we'll just take that out here. Come on, come out of there. And there's our adjuster. Yep, that's locked up solid. At least that part comes off, so we'll have to get these cleaned up. I probably shouldn't have cheaped out and just got new ones, but here we are. So we need this spring. Or is this spring this spring? Oh, no, we do have that spring. We don't have this spring. So throw that one over there, and we'll make sure we hold on to that one. And this little one. We don't have that. And this hardware kit is rather incomplete. So let's see if we can. Got to make sure we hold on to that deal. And then this. So we've got this little cup deal there. We'll probably try to, I mean, we're going to clean all this up, but hold on to that. We'll put that new deal in there, but that spring that we don't have, it doesn't come off of there unless we disassemble it, so we'll just leave it just like that. Pull that one out. And then there's this parking or e-brake cable deal. We're not going to run an e-brake. So, just twist that out of there. But I am going to put this arm back in because where's the piece that I think I'm missing? Let me check the other side. I think we're missing a piece. And we are missing a piece. So where did it go? Where are you? But now by looking at the wear patterns here, we're missing the crossbar for the emergency brake. The other side has it, this side does not. So the emergency brake didn't work on this side anyway. So what it'll be, let me grab a different one and I'll show you. So it's a bar like this. This is out of a Ford 9-inch, but it goes right there. This one's bent too, I guess. It goes right there underneath the wheel cylinder. So we might be up a creek without that. But do we need it? Because what it does, you got this bar across here, and you pull your e-brake, it pushes the shoes apart, just like the wheel cylinder would. But if we're not using the e-brake, we probably don't need it. That's all it does anyway. So, like I said, this one's for a Ford 9-inch, so it's not going to work in here anyway. So in that case, we can just put this lever on the shelf and not transfer it to our new shoes. But with that being said, you should always put all of your brake parts in. So now we've got these two little deals on the wheel cylinder. We got to keep those, get those cleaned up. Take this off. That just retains the shoes behind it. So we'll get that cleaned up. I mean, these e-brake cables are rusted solid anyway. So we don't need those where we're going. So many spider webs. So now we just got to pull this wheel cylinder. One of those bolts. Make sure they fit in my Rock Auto parts, because you just never know. I like Rock Auto and everything, you know, parts are reasonable. You can get all the brands and pay next to nothing for some of it. But I've gotten some bad parts. I think we've all been down that road. But you can also just use regular bolts, which we might do, we might not. So, I mean, there was no way I was going to get that bleeder out of there. And those things were rusted solid. There's no way those pistons were moving. Maybe that one. Unlikely. But wheel cylinders are cheap. I think I paid $8 a piece for these wheel cylinders. So if I'm pulling brakes apart and I've got to bleed them anyway, because this has no brake lines on it, it's worth the $16 to put two wheel cylinders in. Because they may work sometimes, but it's just one side working. Where this side will be seized up and it'll just be this side moving. And that's going to throw everything off. So now we've got this all torn down. Probably should clean this up a little bit inside here. Probably won't. Just say we did. And I'm going to work on getting these couple parts cleaned up. Get this to work again. And we'll get this back together. Alright, so I've got all our pieces cleaned up here. I just take them to the wire wheel on a bench grinder. I mean, that thing's pretty pitted, but you know, it'll be just fine on there. These, you always have to buy them separately. A lot of times they do. I was just trying to save a little bit of money. But they're in pretty good shape, so let's clean those up. And the adjuster, once that broke free, you know, it spins just perfect. So I just run them all the way apart, wire wheel the whole threads, you know, the whole deal. And then, you know, make sure everything's moving free. So now we've got to figure out what we're doing. Got the wheel cylinder on there. You can put these deals in. I've got a little bit of caliper grease. Just put on the end there. Help it slide into that boot a little bit. Okay, so we've got our front shoe here. And then we're going to take our hold down pin. This is the side that would get the longer spring. And our retaining washer. Kind of go just like that. Now, my kit did come with 2 different length nails or retaining pins. I'm going to guess I should put the short one on there because I really shouldn't be able to put that on and off with my fingers. But, you know, of course, the one that came off is halfway of the length between the both of them. So it's kind of just a guess. But we'll try the shorter one, and if it doesn't want to work, we'll go back to the long one. Worst case scenario, using the old one probably wouldn't be the end of the world. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to do it. All right, where did my deal go? There we are. Suppose I can probably still put it on by hand. All right. Try to get it lined up the best we can. Oh, without getting too many leg cramps. So now we've got this shoe. Like I said, I'm going to skip putting any of the parking brake components in there. Partly because they're missing, partly because I don't need them. That sort of thing. So now we've got this self-adjuster deal, which maybe we can get that out of there, maybe we can't. There we go. All right, so we'll swap that out with the new one. It's a little chewed up anyway. And that'll go just like that deal. And that hole. then put our retaining pin in. Our spring. All right, so again, I went for the long pin here. If I pop this up where it goes, still don't have much tension on that. So we're gonna switch that out for the short pin again. That deal in there. All right, so now I've got it all the way in that outside groove, but that just pushes it back a little further, makes it easier to get that spring on. Come on, just work with me here. Okay, so now we've got that deal, but what we need to do is put this spring in there for the self-adjuster. Oh, see, I'm already forgetting stuff. We gotta put a shoe retainer on there. Okay, we got our spring in there, that deal. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So now we've got 2 springs here. And just take flathead. Try not to snap your fingers. So now, being that the flathead doesn't fit through that hook, that's probably not the one we want to use. So let's grab a different one. So many choices. Here's a sacrificial one I've hammered on once or twice. And that one will fit right through the hook there. Yep, that's going to be a little more difficult. So we'll go to plan B. You can use a Phillips on here. Shove that hook in one of the deals. Jeez. Did we not have that in there all the way, or what is going on here? I know they make special tools for this, but it's like I've been doing it this way for so many years. so that special tools are only so much faster, if at all. All right, so all of that business is on there properly. We've got no major spare parts. So now we've got to do the adjuster here. I'll put our adjuster spring on there. I want to make sure we get this lubed up good. Said on brakes, I just use this caliper slide grease on just about everything. Could use anti-seize on the threads here. They'll all basically do the same thing. And for the amount of miles that'll end up going on this truck, I'm not too concerned. All right, wind it all the way down. Some on that nub. That piece on there. All right. All right. So my shoes are pretty centered. All the springs are in. Everything looks like it should work. Now, these drums, they're pretty decent yet. Got a little bit of surface rust on them, but they're not all grooved up, and a little bit of a lip, but that'll be just fine. So we'll adjust these out. Go a little bit more. So we've got this little bit of lip on the drum. So I want it to go on, that lip to go over them tight, because once you get it all the way on past the lip, then you're out of adjustment already if it's just snugging. So give it a couple more clicks, and in theory it should adjust out. And we should be able to, well, this one doesn't have the provision for the backside, but it should adjust out. So how that works is we've got this bent rod that goes down to the automatic adjuster. When this pushes out, if I can get everything in here, it pulls on that adjuster, which down here makes it a lever and pushes on that teeth, on those teeth on the adjuster. So if it's pushing, if the wheel cylinder is pushing the shoes out really far, it's gonna start rolling that adjuster down, and over time it'll take up the space. So we should be good there. Now did I just make it too tight? Perfect. All right, so now we've got our Spartan Locker in. I've just got to get that gasket surface cleaned up, get the cover cleaned up, glue that back on. Got our brakes done on this side. Don't figure I need to show you the other side. It's basically the same, just has extra parts that this side doesn't have and didn't have. So we've got this side done. I'll just get the other side done, and then we can start worrying about brake lines. I've got a lot of parts left to go on this. I'm still waiting for exhaust parts because I've tried 2 different sets of headers, and I've never had headers fit so poorly on something before in my life because they hit everything. So we'll just keep plugging away at this. I got to get this truck out of here before it snows so we can get the 55 back in here. I know there's a lot of people waiting to see the 55 come back together. So I appreciate you watching, and don't forget to subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.